Do church meetings do any good? Well, that's a question which might disturb a lot of us, but it's not my question. It's what Paul, the apostle, is asking the church at Corinth. Let me read it to you from the horse's mouth. It's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 17. I have no praise for you, for your meetings do more harm than good. Well, Paul is writing to the Corinthians and he's saying, all your church gatherings, all your church programs, your church meetings, it actually does more harm than good. Can a church do more harm than good? Well, it's possible. The answer is pretty simple. If we only profess our Christian faith and we don't practice it, I'll tell you, we can do a whole lot of harm, a lot of damage to the kingdom of God. Well, Paul is saying here in this, when you guys come together, when you participate in your church gatherings, I'm not able to see God in it. I'm not able to see, God making an impact through your lives. That's the problem. So when you read the whole of the scriptures in the 1 Corinthians, you will see what was going on in the church at Corinth. Number one, there were a lot of divisions in the church. There were kind of a fan club. There was a kind of hero worship that was going on. Remember Paul said, some of you say you belong to Paul, some of you like Peter, some of you say we follow Apollos. The whole church was divided among itself. They have started treating the servants of God like celebrities. And that's why I remember Paul is saying, we are just ordinary people, used by God. I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the increase. So you see, there was a whole lot of division inside the church. The church was divided. Number two, there were quarrels. People were fighting against each other. And as a result of that, they were taking their fellow Christians to the courts. There were lawsuits, and they were taking them to the heathen judge, and a heathen is trying to settle issues between Christians. And Paul is saying, how could this be possible? We are Christians. Why don't you forgive each other? Why don't you allow yourself to be wronged, to be cheated? Why don't you love each other? That's why Paul is saying, don't you know that we are called to judge the angels, judge the world, but you guys are not even able to settle your own issues within the church. Number three, there was sexual immorality in the church. You read that in the Bible. There was a guy inside the church who was having immoral relationship with his stepmother, and the church seems to be okay with it. Some of them were thinking, it's okay, we shouldn't be judgmental about it. But Paul is saying, you guys should be grieved about the whole thing. You should have tried to reprimand this guy, where rather you're pretty okay with what's going on in the church. But inside the church is supposed to be a moral institution, where God is calling us for purity, where inside the church there's so much of immorality. Number four, you'll be surprised that they were getting drunk during the Lord's table. They were abusing the Lord's Supper. So the list goes on. I want to keep it very short. So that's why Paul is saying, for your church meetings do more harm than good. Well, I think it's a question that we all need to reflect upon. Do our church meetings do more harm than good? Well, it can if we fail to show Christ in our lives. The church of Corinth had a lot of spiritual experiences, but Paul is talking about spiritual character. One of the reasons why the world is not able to appreciate our Christianity, one of the reasons why, people are mocking about our churches, our church gatherings, our church leaders, the believers in the way that we live, is because we have failed to show and reflect Christ through our lives. Well, what does the world see inside the church? I'll tell you, they see a lot of angry people inside the church. They see a lot of proud people who are very selfish, people who are unable to forgive each other. There's a lot of jealousy, envy. There's a lot of greed. They become lovers of money. And, we are divided on racial lines, caste discrimination. We really don't love each other. And that's why we fail to reflect Jesus to the community. Somewhere we have to search through the church history to find when the church have started to become so unlike Christ. When have we stopped becoming like Jesus? I think that's the antidote. No, yes, I believe the church can do a whole lot of good to the community. That's the reason why Jesus has instituted the church, to transform the community, to transform a society, to transform lives. But it can happen only when we at least make an effort, an attempt to live this Christian life.